In the early 1970s, America was in the middle of a bizarre wave of skyjackings. Almost every few weeks, someone would try to divert a commercial flight to Cuba, some armed, some desperate, and some simply reckless. But in 1972, one woman carried out one of the strangest hijackings in aviation history. She had no weapon, no explosive, not even a fake device. All she had was a single handwritten note. This is the story of Barbara Oswald, the woman whose bluff almost brought down an airline. On a chilly afternoon in March 1972, passengers boarded a small Allegheny Airlines flight in Pennsylvania. It was a typical domestic route, regular commuters, families, business travelers. Among them was a quiet, unassuming woman in her mid-30s, wearing a simple coat and holding a small handbag. She didn't stand out. She didn't talk to anyone. Flight attendants later said she seemed nervous, but in those days no one paid attention to things like that. There were no metal detectors, no bag scans, no ID checks. People simply walked onto planes like they were buses. Barbara Oswald found her seat, stared out the window, and clutched a folded piece of paper. That note was her entire plan. About halfway through the flight, Oswald stood up. Passengers thought she was going to the restroom, nothing unusual. But instead, she quietly approached the nearest flight attendant and pressed the folded note into her hand. When the attendant opened it, her face went pale. The message was short, handwritten, and terrifying. I have a bomb. Divert the plane to Cuba. No threats, no details, just the demand. The flight attendant swallowed hard, nodded, and walked straight to the cockpit. Inside the cockpit, the captain and first officer read the note twice. There was no way to know if the threat was real. At the time, Cuba-bound hijackings were so common that airlines had strict protocols. Don't risk a fight. Don't confront the hijacker. Get the plane on the ground safely. So the captain picked up the radio and notified air traffic control. We have a hijack situation. To avoid panic, the crew made a calm, vague announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, due to a minor issue, we'll be making an unscheduled landing. Most passengers didn't think twice. They had no idea that someone on board was threatening to blow the aircraft apart. Meanwhile, Barbara Oswald returned to her seat and sat quietly, almost too calmly. She didn't yell, she didn't wave threats, she didn't demand attention, she simply waited. As if she truly believed her note was enough to change the plane's destiny. As the aircraft approached Cuban airspace, fighter jets appeared on the horizon. It was standard procedure. Cuba was used to receiving hijacked planes and they were not taking chances. The passenger plane descended slowly and landed at Jose Marti International Airport in Havana. When the doors opened, Cuban soldiers boarded with weapons drawn. They demanded that the hijacker be identified. Oswald stood up and surrendered immediately. She raised her hands and told them, "I'm seeking political asylum." The soldiers searched her bags, her pockets, even the overhead compartments. There was no bomb, no wiring, not even a fake device, just the note. Cuban officials were furious. Their policy was strict. Any hijacker without a legitimate political motive or without actual weapons would be jailed. They arrested Barbara on the spot. The plane's passengers were kept in Cuba for several hours while authorities questioned the crew. Eventually, they were allowed to fly back to the United States. As for Barbara Oswald, she didn't get the asylum she hoped for. She was imprisoned in Cuba before eventually being returned to the U.S., where she faced federal charges for hijacking, one of the most serious crimes in aviation. But her case became legendary not because of violence, but because of its simplicity. No explosives, no weapons, just a piece of paper, and a bluff bold enough to reroute an entire airplane. In the strange history of skyjacking, Barbara Oswald's story remains one of the most unusual reminders of how different, how vulnerable air travel once was.